Well, it's 2025 and we're still in a bad job market. Additionally, the rapid development of AI is also threatening many jobs. Furthermore, the Doge job cuts in the States are also racking up. Now, for the last couple of years, whenever I've mentioned anything about jobs, I've always mentioned that my job is pretty safe. Considering I was the accountant of the company, I had pretty decent insight into the company's financials and operations, as well as being close with the management. However, lately I've been thinking, what if my job isn't safe? My career is a stable one, no doubt. I'm not worried about my career, but I am starting to have doubts about my job, or at least I am drastically overthinking things. The local economy around the business I work for is terrible, and although the company does value me, they value staying afloat even more. So I got to thinking, yeah, I think I could get another job within a decently short time frame. Maybe this assumption is wrong, but would I really be fine if I lost my job to AI or a layoff? So in this video, we'll go over some figures and projections, and we'll see if I would actually be okay financially if I did lose my job. Mentally is a different story, but I'll touch on that later in the video. So starting off, if I lost my job, the job loss would come around early May, or later, but at the very earliest it would be early May. The reason for this is, at the time I've calculated these figures and had these thoughts, it's late March. Who knows how long it'll take me to get this video done and uploaded, but there is no actual way I can lose this job before early May, since my job would need to give notice, sort out HR/legal matters, etc. So look, I probably am overthinking, but if my overthinking, worst case scenario, comes true, a redundancy cannot happen earlier than May of 2025. I am a full-time worker at my office job and I live in Australia, and the job loss would come as a result of a redundancy, not gross incompetence or misconduct. What this means is there are some certain laws that dictate extra payouts involved. I know the United States has some form of this redundancy too, since all the layoff type videos always mention something about a few weeks of redundancy pay. So they have a small buffer after losing their jobs due to restructures and layoffs. We have the same in Australia. At least we have the same in my state of Victoria, Australia. I imagine it's the same elsewhere too, but I don't live in the other states or territories in the country, so I don't care. Now, since I started this job in early 2021, based on the laws in this state, I have served 4 years of continuous service. The image here from Grok AI summarizes it. I did also use the actual redundancy pay website, but it's just more straightforward showing you the stuff from Grok. The irony of using AI in a video about AI and layoffs taking away jobs. So 4 years is my time frame for redundancy calculation's sake. The image shows some text at the top about the date changing from the 23rd of March to the 1st of May. Reason is I forgot to tell the AI initially that my admittedly unlikely redundancy date would be the 1st of May. It was calculating it at the time of my prompt. Not important for you to know, just thought I'd mention it in case anyone was confused here. Next, there's a scale that shows how many weeks of redundancy pay you get. The longer you're there, the more weeks you get paid out. So for my gross salary of $80,000, which doesn't include any benefits or my superannuation/retirement amounts, my weekly pay times the 8 entitled weeks equals a bit over $12,000. Pretty nice. Well, not that nice considering you only receive it because you lost your job. Now, here is something that is actually surprising. The government actually taking away taxes? What? No way! Yes way. So when you get made redundant in my state, there's a certain threshold in which your payment is tax-free. I am way under this threshold, so easy calculation. My entire redundancy payout would be tax-free. If you receive this amount as a bonus, you'd lose a good chunk in taxes, so it's good to see the government isn't kicking you while you're down, despite the fact a lot of job losses right now are the result of economic mismanagement from various governments over the past several years. Okay, so now this image here shows my total redundancy payout. When you lose your job, they owe you any annual leave entitlements you had. Not sure where everyone else is from, but here in Australia and a lot of Western type countries, you have paid leave if you have a full-time or part-time job. Currently, I have about 11 days of paid leave, I think. I just told the AI that I only have 5 to be conservative. I plan on using some soon anyway, but if I am made redundant in May, then, well, I won't be using any of it, lol. But the point is, your job owes you this money when you leave. Sick leave, however, they do not. I am not sure how much sick leave I have, since my workplace, and many others, don't like telling you this, since it sort of just incentivizes you to take sick days if you know you have some banked up. When you leave/are terminated, this entitlement evaporates, so I won't get paid out any remaining sick leave days. I would, however, receive any paid time off owing. Unfortunately, this amount is taxed, just like your normal paycheck. So we have our $12,307.68 tax-free amount from a genuine redundancy, and for 5 days of annual leave, that gross amount is $1,807.68. The reason this is higher than what I normally get paid for 5 days of work is because you get an extra 17.5% on top of your regular pay for your paid time off. It started in the 1970s and no one actually changed it since, so win. But not win because taxes. So after taxes, the net annual leave I receive works out to be $1,229.12. When you add this figure onto my potential redundancy pay, I would get paid $13,536.90 if I was to lose my job in May. And if anything, it'd be more since I have more than 5 days of paid leave. So that's a pretty nice safety buffer, I'll say. This amount is basically an 11-week buffer, since on a normal week, I'd be paying tax, but this payout is after tax. I basically have a 3-month leeway to find a new job before my finances technically start going backwards from a projected plan point of view. Basically, at the start of the year, I was set to make a certain amount of money. Obviously, losing a job throws a spanner in those works. But if I found a job after 11 weeks, I'd still be on track, since I would have earned the same amount of money based on the trajectory at the start of the year. If I found a job before the 11-week time frame, I'd be ahead of schedule. If it took me longer than 11 weeks, I'd be behind. So this begs the question, why did you bother calculating this? Well, Grok/ChatGPT summarized it. I already did the calcs on the website, but it's easier to explain in a YouTube video with the help of AI. So why bother calculating this? Well, it's to show my financial position if I was laid off. Now, let's delve into good old Microsoft Excel. So you can see here that I initially made this little projection at the 5th of May, and my last update was at the 21st of May. You can see here on the 5th I had big costs upcoming, which was my tax bill that wasn't due yet at the time of that calculation, some $2,000 data recovery for an old laptop of mine, and a Botox appointment that I had shortly after. Big uncommon expenses that I had to take away from my projected bank balance, since obviously my bank would have been drained of these funds shortly after. Now, as at the last update on the 21st, there's only $31,300 that I need to account for. These costs don't include stuff like groceries or petrol, but they're included later. This $31,300 amount, however, is what I have committed to my home builder. Basically, there are 5 stages left in the build of my home. At 2 of these stages, I owe the home builder a decent chunk of money. The rest of what the builder is owed is covered by my mortgage. Yes, I have a mortgage, so the pressure to have a job is much higher than it was years ago when I had no mortgage. So point is, there's $31,300 in my bank account currently that I basically do not have. Do not include this in your savings buffer, since you will not have this in a few months' time. So at the start of the month, my bank balance at the time, take away my future upcoming big costs, meant I had a bank balance of around $18,500. Later in the month, using my current bank balance, take away the big upcoming costs, means I have about $21,600 in my bank account currently. Now here we start adding in the projections. We're going off the start of May, since that's the earliest a possible redundancy can happen for me. First, include my current bank balance minus the future upcoming costs. Next, add in the redundancy, since that's what I'd receive in early May if I lost my job. Next, we add in the income I'd received from my jobs until then. Yep, I said jobs, plural. I will talk about my other job later. If you're wondering why I didn't include the other job as part of this possible redundancy, it's because you literally cannot lose that job without gross misconduct. and I've worked there for more than 12 and a half years now. Pretty sure I know how to not do a gross misconduct. Redundancy at that job is less likely than the dinosaurs coming back to life, but I'll talk about that later. So considering the amount of pay slips between the time of this calculation and early May, I will earn $10,634.76 between now and then. So obviously include this in your projections for May, since it's not like I won't work a single day until then get made redundant. So that's a nice bit of extra income coming in, but we need to consider my expenses. Taxes are already accounted for in this income flow from jobs, so now we just need to consider expenses. I've just used an amount of $190 per week times 6 weeks, since there was about 6 weeks between the time of these calculations to early May, and then I've included 2 mortgage repayments of $1,127 too, since I'll have 2 mortgage repayments by the time early May rolls around. My mortgage repayments are this low because right now I'm only paying off the land component of my mortgage. As my home build progresses, and as the bank feeds the home builder their funds, I owe the bank more and more money. So these mortgage repayments are going to go up soon, just not now. So my current bank balance, not counting the $31,300 from my home builder, plus the payout I'd get from a redundancy, add in the income for the next several weeks, take away potential expenses, equals a bank balance of $42,382.80. If I got made redundant, this is what my available bank balance is looking like at the time of the layoff. So not a bad spot to be in, I'd say. But what about beyond May? What would my situation start to look like after not having that accounting income flowing in? Well, I need to mention my other job first. Alongside my accounting job, I also work at a supermarket on the weekends, and I have a contract too, which means my hours are guaranteed. I get paid a bit less per hour than if I was a casual employee, but in exchange, I get a bit of paid leave, a bit of sick leave, and most importantly, guaranteed hours. Now, this wagey job is an enormous safety net buffer, obviously. I said before it's impossible to be made redundant from this job. Well, the company I work for on the weekends actually announced layoffs recently, after their earnings report failed to impress the big fat cat shareholders. So, gamification, why aren't you worried about these layoffs? Well, personally, I am not worried about these because they're cutting the office roles, not the on-the-ground wagey roles. It's the same way how years ago I remember some report from Tesla came out about job cuts, but these job cuts were for office staff, not the actual people in the factories. Same with Amazon, all the job cuts are in the office. At least, I think so. Maybe I misheard something, but I was fairly sure that the Amazon warehouse workers weren't the ones on the chopping block. But feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I had heard in some areas in the United States that Amazon isn't even hiring anymore, which is a grim sign for the labor market, but that's different from firing/laying off people. The point is, yeah, my second job is doing layoffs, but not in my area of work. They do often do budget cuts, which means they cut hours for the casual staff. But guess what? That's not me. I'm not a casual staff, so my hours can't be cut. Now, before I continue on with the trajectory of my finances without my accounting job and a larger mortgage, all my other expenses, etc., yes, I am lucky that I have my supermarket job. However, I just held on to this job through uni, and when I started my full-time job, there was no luck there in a way, it was just simply hustling. There's nothing lucky about my alarm going off at 6:50 a.m. on a Saturday, even though it went off at that time the last 5 days of the week. Nothing lucky about not having a sleep in on a Saturday after already working all week. There's nothing lucky about finishing work at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, then rushing home to get your stuff ready for an early wake-up Monday morning. And how about the 2020 lockdowns? I was working 32 pandemic hours a week at the only place that was open, making about $600 a week for that. Meanwhile, people were getting paid $750 a week to do nothing. And to make things even worse, I was fired from the accounting job I had at that time before the lockdown started. So my career got absolutely derailed before I even had any super valuable experience, meaning it would be exponentially harder to find a new job compared to if I even had 2 years experience, whilst every other office worker got to work from home that whole time, stacking career experience. So tell me how I'm lucky again? Yeah, I have a pretty nice safety buffer now, but in my eyes, this is a correction.
This is a correction.
I had such bullshit luck in 2020, losing my main job before I even had enough experience to get other jobs easily, and after that, everyone else got paid to work from home, while I had to work 32 wagey hours per week earning $600 when heaps of other people were working 0 hours a week getting paid $750. So I was making $600 a week for busting my ass whilst my career was slowly dying since I wasn't gaining any experience this whole time. Meanwhile, all my other office counterparts were stacking months of experience whilst working from home, getting paid way more than me, and they probably weren't even doing that much work that whole time either. And even those that didn't have office jobs, they were getting paid $750 a week to work 0 hours a week. You are free to call me lucky if you want, but I don't think so. I simply think this is just a correction. There was no way that bullshit I dealt with in 2020 was fair. A lot of people right now are struggling in this job market, that's true, but in many cases they were working from home in 2020, and even in recent years too. I've noticed all the videos of people getting laid off are via laptop, aka via work from home, so that's a correction in my eyes. I was never able to work from home, even now. Still got to commute 2+ hours each day to work. That's a lot of time and cost on petrol that I had to lose compared to many others. The struggles of employment right now are what I had to face years ago. Who knows, maybe that could be me again in a few months. But my point is, some may consider this supermarket job backup as luck, but I see it as a correction. I've used that word so many times it's losing its meaning, but it is. It's a correction. It's like, oh wow, gamification, that was such bullshit you had to deal with in 2020. Here, we'll throw you a bone in 2025. The pain in the ass, underpaying job you had in 2020 has now morphed into a super stable safety net. As for everyone else, they were on easy street in 2020. Now it's time to throw a correction their way. They had it good enough for long enough. I don't know if that's going to upset some people. I'm not saying you deserve to be unemployed and struggling in this economy, but what I am saying is I've had my fair share of bullshit too. My current, more fortunate situation is simply, once again, a correction. So with that out of the way, let's delve further into the numbers. So starting off with a bit over $42,000 in the bank in May, I will be earning $550 per week from the wagey job still from that point on. It's actually $549.95, but all I have to do is clock on or off a bit earlier/later than my usual shift time, and I get like an extra, $3. Payroll always pays this out. I don't do it all the time since it could cause some issues, but I legit only need to do this like twice over the span of several months, and I average over $550. Even then, we have Easter coming up soon at the time of this script, and those hours are at public holiday rates. So I will average even more, and also, if I have no full-time job, I could always pick up some extra shifts during the day. Point is, I'll earn at least $550 per week from the wagey job. Next, mortgage per week. Now mine is paid monthly, but apportioning this per week, it's going to be $560 at the current interest rates, which are likely going to be lower in the coming months, despite the fact inflation in Australia is probably headed back up. So if anything, this value would be lower in the future. Even so, my mortgage isn't this high yet. Currently, it's $1,127 per month, times 12 divided by 52 equals $260 a week. So for the next few months, my mortgage repayments won't be this high. So if anything, I'll have even more money than what this calculation is considering, but I don't know exactly when I'll owe more or how much that amount will be until the home builder has completed each particular stage. So for conservative sake, I've just calculated the full eventual mortgage amount at the current interest rates. So wagey income take away mortgage leaves me in the hole. But we still have my regular expenses, which I've counted to about $190 per week. This is actually quite high, but I'll come back to this. So wagey income minus mortgage minus expenses equals a loss of $200 per week. So I bleed $200 per week in this scenario. Now the bank balance, as I may, divided by the money I lose per week, means there is about 212 weeks before I run out of money, which is about 48 months before I am broke, which works out to be about 4 years before I run out of money. That is an enormous runway. So if I did lose my job at the earliest possible point in time, I would still have 4 years before I run into any real troubles. But there's a few things that this calculation doesn't take into account. One, the cost of, well, literally anything else involved in my house. My mortgage doesn't cover any furniture, utilities, council rates, taxes, insurances, etc. So really, I have a lot less time than the 4 years to get another job. But I have also gone really heavy on the expenses guess. And here's why. Two of my biggest expenses are private health insurance and petrol. Private health insurance costs me about $108 a month now, because it went up recently, because insurances always fucking go up in cost. And petrol costs me somewhere around $80 a week. It used to cost a bit more, but I've got a few money-saving tips that brings my costs down by about 10 cents per litre. I talked briefly about the recent expense cuts in a recent video, and I'll share what I did in a future video, but basically, there's a voucher I take advantage of with my super fund, my supermarket stuff discount at participating petrol stations, and cheaper gift cards that can be used for fuel. So $80-ish per week times 4.33 for roughly 4.3 weeks per month equals $346 in fuel per month, plus $108 in private health insurance equals $454 a month for these two expenses alone. So why did I bring this up? Because the only reason my petrol costs are so high is because I use it to drive to work. So without my office job, my petrol costs are going to be way lower, since I won't need to commute 2+ hours each day to get to the office 5 days a week. Additionally, the only reason I have private health insurance is to cut down my tax bill. Now, for those who aren't in Australia, or for the fellow Aussies who don't really know, if your gross taxable income is over $97,000 for the current financial year, you pay extra tax, basically. Your gross taxable income is your total income minus any deductions. Now, I have a lot of deductions on standby, so with these deductions, I could actually still have a gross taxable income under this amount. But you also get discounts for buying private health insurance under the age of 30, which is a discount you keep until you turn 41. Basically, it's cheaper for about a decade if you buy it earlier, and since I plan on having a lot of taxable income in my 30s, it's going to save me 4% per year in my 30s if I buy now. Should have bought it when I was 25 to maximize the discount, but I didn't know about this then. Oh well, better late than never. I guess my taxable income also wasn't high enough in years past either. Might have been worth paying anyway to lock in a 10% discount on private health insurance in my 30s, but who cares? Nothing I can do about it now. So let's say my taxable income is $100,000. Your salary and other income earned minus deductions equals $100,000. This falls in the 1% Medicare levy surcharge, so 1% of your taxable income, being $1,000, means you have to pay an extra $1,000 in tax. Now, $1,000 in tax is still less than private health insurance, that being $108 per month times 12 months equals $1,296. But one, this assumes my taxable income is $100K. It could be higher. Well, not with my deductions, but in many cases, private health insurance is cheaper than paying the tax. Also, consider the age-based discount. It's better for me in the next decade to have this now anyway. And two, I also had some free weeks of private health insurance due to some deal. So it's cheaper than this amount. I got 6 weeks free, so like $156 discount for the free weeks. CPA has some deal that gets you 8 weeks off, but for some fucking reason, they only told me this after I paid for the 6-week off deal. Oh well, I will probably just cancel then reapply next year, assuming this deal is still on for CPA members. All this stuff isn't super important, but what is important for this video is the fact I only have private health insurance to reduce my taxes. Well, if I lost my accounting job, my taxable income would be well under $97,000, meaning I have no real need for private health insurance. So that's $108 a month in expenses I'd be able to cut. Yes, I would probably lose the age-based discount. Not totally sure how it works for having it partway through being 28, or for having it for parts of the year, but losing the age-based discount is a worthwhile trade-off to help cut my costs if I lost my job. Also, quick note, I saw some video the other day talking about Australia and it's like wealth standard or standard of living or whatever, and one point they made was like 13 million Australians have private health insurance. Well, most of us only have this to reduce our taxes. It has nothing to do with health reasons. Our healthcare system is decent enough as it is. I had some blood work done recently and it was meant to cost me like $41. but the Aussie healthcare system paid for it. Also not 100% sure if this is true or not, but I recall hearing that private healthcare is actually worse than the public healthcare. Don't really know and don't really care right now, but the point is most Aussies only have private healthcare or private health insurance to reduce their taxes. I actually cancelled my plan with a prior healthcare company since my new one had better deals, and in the email itself, they literally mentioned the extra taxes. Never you mind about our health benefits and whatnot. What about your taxes? If you want to get into a stable industry in Australia, get into private healthcare, since all high-earning Aussies have it, since it's cheaper than paying the extra tax for not having it. But anyway, for the sake of this video, I can cut this expense if I need. So my expenses could be much, much lower than $190 a week, which is already a huge figure. I can also cull extras like Botox and laser hair removal, even dental. My private healthcare currently, with my extras, covers dental, but obviously without that, I would need to pay for dental. But I could just not do that. I could just delay dental work until I'm back on my feet. So yeah, this rough forecast of 4 years before broke doesn't take into account any other costs associated with my house, but it also doesn't take into account the fact that I can cut my expenses way back if I need to. Also, this doesn't consider the fact I can work extra wagey shifts, and also doesn't take into account renting out rooms in my house, which is something I planned on doing anyway. So ultimate point is, even at a worst case scenario, I have about 4 years to get my shit together again. So in terms of the financial side of things, I have more than enough of a runway to keep me on my feet if I lost my job. Now let's talk about the possibilities of finding a new job. I have seen the labour market is a right proper mess right now. So what do I think about my chances of finding a new job if I lost this one in the current climate? Well, I'm not sure, but I feel I would be fine. And here's why. All of the layoff type videos I've seen have involved a handful of degrees or skill sets. None of those skill sets have been accounting. I recall seeing 1 or 2 grad accountant TikToks about struggling to find work, but, well, welcome to the club. That's literally what I mentioned earlier. It was rough finding a new job without experience. But I have experience now, so for me, I've already gone through that stage of my life. Check out this clip from some creator's video I found a while ago. She applied to 2 jobs from memory and got 1 offer. A 50% success rate in this job market. Insane. Alright, I'm going back through looking for that part where she applied for 2 jobs and got 1. I actually misheard that. She applied for 2, got 1 interview, didn't get it, but then applied for like several more. So I screwed that up, but the point stands on the fact that she ended up getting a job relatively easily because she had Big 4 experience. But with that said, she still got an interview after only 2 applications. Like, how often does it take people to get 1 interview? Like several hundred applications? So, I did screw it up, but my point kind of was still the same. It was substantially easier for her to get a job because of the Big 4. Now, why was it this easy? Well, chances are it was her Big 4 experience. Experience at the Big 4 is extremely valuable to have on your resume, for accounting specifically, but it has a lot of crossover to other industries. I do not have Big 4 experience, but I do have solid experience within my specific accounting path. I have seen on the accounting subreddit that jobs are hard to come by, but these people either 1, already have a job and were just looking for something different. That's a huge difference compared to not having a job. Or 2, they were being picky. Like, oh, this job is fully in office, not fully remote. Or this job pays 10K less than my last job. Stuff like that. So yeah, it's not exactly the best in accounting, but there are still jobs around. Well, except for IRS agents, I hear they're getting a pretty bad deal since their skill set isn't as transferable to many public or industry type accounting roles, but since I don't work in that field, that issue wouldn't be something I personally face. We're talking about me here, not the entire accounting labor market in general. I can make another video on that topic in due time. So I have kept my eye on Seek lately. Seek is like the #1 job website here in Australia. I think overseas Indeed might be the best option. Not sure, but I've kept my eye on the job websites, and the other day I saw heaps of jobs that were pretty similar to my current role in terms of roles and responsibilities. They also all required having your CPA, or CA, which are advanced accounting qualifications here in Australia. I wonder if I already went through that chapter in my life already. So, I have the educational requirement, and I basically have the specific skill set too. I'm obviously not the only person in Victoria, Australia with his skill set and education, but with the abundance of jobs in this field, eventually I'd land one, I feel. But this begs the question, could these be ghost jobs? Well, potentially, but I won't know for sure unless I was actively applying. I do know that none of these companies are repeat companies from the last few times I looked, except for Hayes, but Hayes is a recruiting company. A big company will go to them, and that company, Hayes, will find the talent. That's one reason I don't believe these are ghost jobs. If you wanted to post a job to make your company look good to shareholders, or to spook your employees into thinking their jobs are at risk of replacement, or if you were leading your employees on, tricking them into thinking they have more help on the way whilst you overwork them in the meantime, why go through a recruitment agency? Especially since recruitment agencies keep the other company anonymous anyway. They'll always say, oh, our client is this, our client is that. Who's your client? Like, no one will know. You also could be paying that recruitment agency for their time too. So it's just a waste of money if you were posting ghost jobs. When I got hired at my current company, they used a recruitment agency to find and contact me, and my workplace had to pay 10% of my salary to them after I was hired. So in that case, they got paid for a successful candidate, but I'm not sure if there were any other fees prior for engagement. I find it hard to believe you can just get a recruitment agency to look for people, they find no one, and you say, oh well, thanks for trying, and not pay them anything for their time. But this is just my speculation. Perhaps these finance manager jobs I see are all ghost jobs and the big fancy companies are just wasting money for no reason. Also, you have to pay Seek to list a job on their website. I know this because I paid an invoice at my job for Seek ages ago when they were hiring for a certain role. So again, why would companies pay to post a job they have no intention of filling? Why not just post it for free on your website or social media or something? Maybe this expense is worth it for them for shareholder goodwill or for tricking their employees? Who knows? Ghost jobs aside, I did update my resume recently and it's primed for job applications. I've tailored it well to my specific industry, so that's all sorted. But again, I have no idea how I'd fare in the current job application market since I haven't been actively applying. I feel I would be fine, but who knows? So financially, I'd be fine for a while, and in terms of finding a new job, I also think I'd be fine. But mentally, how would I cope? Well, a lot better than my last two job losses, that's for sure. The upside of the last two times I lost my job was I had no real huge expenses. No mortgage, that's for sure. I was still in my early 20s. No real financial pressure back then. Now I have way more expenses, and I'm older, I'm 28. And the expenses, well, most notably, a mortgage. But back then, I also had no experience. Way harder to find a job with no experience. Well, I had some, but a few months experience not doing much and no CPA is piss weak compared to a few years experience in a specific career path with my CPA. I mentioned in a video ages ago that I was literally going to consider game overing myself if I lost a third job, since it's like, well, fuck this. Why keep trying if I'm only going to keep failing? I worked this hard and for what? Nothing. Let's hit factory reset. Let's start a new game and hopefully I have way better RNG when I'm reincarnated. Well, I would absolutely not do that now, since unlike the last time, my circumstances are much, much better. I would be sad if I lost this job since this job quite literally saved my life. It revived my career and provided the income required to get the rest of my life together. And this job is super chill. Very rarely do I come to work stressed, but if I did lose this job, it would also allow an opportunity for me to grow more. If you were keeping track of the money I mentioned in this video, you'd know my base salary is $80,000, and the jobs I showed before on Seek all paid more than $120,000. So if you caught on, my current job underpays me for my market skills, but I talked in a prior video about how I'm choosing stability and security over the potential for extra money. I needed the stability of a longer tenure at a job to get my bank loan for my house, but the bank has already given me / approved that loan, so I don't need the stability anymore. Plus, back then, when I was getting these other job offers, I didn't have my CPA anyway, so the salary jumps were only like $20,000. They weren't jumps of like $30,000 to $60,000, like what would be the case if I went to a finance manager job in Melbourne, which I couldn't have gotten earlier because I didn't have my CPA. Point is, there was like a lot of reasons I didn't job hop in the past, most notably because I didn't have my CPA anyway, and I was picking stability for my bank loan. I'm still not going to dare try and leave in this economy anyway, especially since a few more years of earnings at this rate will basically set up my 2 houses that I have planned, which means I'll have even more of a safety net to take more gambles with other parts of my life. But if I did lose this job, well, my salary can only really go up due to my education and skill set. Also, I can't work from home at this job, annoying as fuck. So if I lost this job, well, surely my next one allows some sort of hybrid arrangement. So there are pros and cons to losing this job. I'd much prefer to keep it since I have some great momentum going, but it's not all doom and gloom if the layoff hammer whacks me too. Now lastly, I figure I'd mention how I got in this situation in the first place. How did I end up so secure? Most people who lose a job barely have a few weeks of savings. I have basically 4 years. How? Well, I've worked these 2 jobs for the past 4+ years. Obviously, I'm going to save a lot in that time frame. A lot of my savings went towards my house, but in turn, that means I have a drastically reduced mortgage. So my mortgage repayments are quite low for someone who bought a house my size. I could have gone safer and bought something much smaller, but the larger house is a greater investment overall. A bit more risky in terms of the funding required, but I did that part already. The hard part of this was working to save the down payment and working the 2 jobs to allow the loan serviceability. If I lost my job in like 2022, I would have been in dire trouble since I wouldn't have enough of a down payment to secure this house. And even if I could get the bank to service the rest of the amount, my mortgage repayments would be enormous. But since I secured myself during those last few years, my current situation is much, much easier. Additionally, doing my CPA studies throughout this whole time meant I also have a huge career hurdle sorted now too, since most of the big jobs require your CPA. Yeah, the actual skills and whatnot are a big part of the equation, but by far the hardest part is the qualification itself. So, my hard work in the past few years has set me up with a nice safety barrier. If I lost my job with no CPA, I'd be in a bit of trouble in the job market unless I wanted to take pay cuts or compete with a larger pool of candidates, since obviously there are more people to compete with at the lower levels compared to the higher levels. So, safe bets, hard work and smart decisions over the past few years has put me in a spot where I would be pretty fine if I was to face a job loss either by layoff or AI, even though I really don't believe AI will replace my job, but it doesn't hurt to entertain the idea. This little exercise I did has really helped ease my mind, since I wasn't exactly sure how I'd fare with my new mortgage and whatnot, but going through the numbers, it appears I'll be okay. These figures also didn't account for a layoff later in the year either. The longer it takes to lay me off, the higher of a safety net I'll have accumulated. And also, like I said before, I can always pick up extra shifts, rent out rooms, etc. A job loss right now would ruin my plan of getting my next property number 2, but that's fine, I can worry about that in the future, but for my baseline level of survival, I'll be okay. Now this video wasn't intended to flex in any way, it was to paint a picture of my personal situation and how I personally would fare if I lost my job. I know heaps of others are doing it tough in this job market, but that was me once upon a time too. I've already endured my hardship. You'll get through it. I didn't think I would in 2020. I did, and you will too. I didn't splurge tens of thousands of dollars on pointless crap over the past 4 years. I stuck with my part-time job instead of leaving, and now I've been rewarded. So hopefully you could use what I've done and draw on some of my ideas to help set yourself up in the event of a job loss in your life. We're all going to make it, brah. Thanks for watching. That is all.